Welcome, friends. It is good to be here. I am excited for another. It's been too long. It has been too long, even though it's only been maybe 6 days, 7 days, but it's been too long. I'm excited to get in today's conversation. This is episode 8. Those of you that are frequent watchers, welcome back. Thank you for your support, both on the channel. Thank you for your prayers. Thank you for those of you that are in Discord. Thank you for being there. I always feel weird when I say Discord because I feel like I'm saying that we aren't unified in some way. But Discord is just a program that we utilize to engage as a community. We are up to about 116 now people that are in the Discord chat. If you would like to join, please scan the QR code up in the corner. We would love to have you join. There are other ways to connect. I would love to have you go and join, kind of add there's kind of a bell that you can subscribe to for on the blog, as well as the Patreon account. Now, some of you, thank you for being a part of the Patreon community. If you join as a paid member inside of the Patreon community, you will get access to a private channel inside of Discord. You have to connect the two to be added. Again, if you have any issues with that, let us know. If you are a member of the YouTube channel, please let me know. I would like to add you. We're working on, from a tech standpoint, behind the scenes to make sure that those of you that are supporting financially in some way, that you would get access to the kind of behind the scenes stuff, some of the academic articles, the things that I'm doing behind the scenes that I don't put out front yet, or that will get access to stuff before the rest of the group does. So thank you for those of you that are supporting in that regard. I do want to give you a quick, before we get into the meat of this, and this is going to be a reasonably granular, detailed dive today. I don't even have a time frame for how long this is going to go. I need to get through some of this content. So I'm glad you're here. Hopefully you'll be able to hang with us the whole time. If not, you can always go back and watch it after the fact, because I do recognize this is it's a commitment to be in one of these longer deep dives. But I wanted to give you a little bit of a kind of a quick perspective. Let me see where I've got this. Here we go. I wanted to give you access to at least a view of the upcoming. This article is almost finished. I'm having it proofread. This is a rigorous article. It's got well over, I'm going to show you actually some of the footnotes. It'll be pretty small because it's in a PDF version. But this is the up-to-date, most recent academic article that, and I say academic, when I mean academic is no, it's not peer-reviewed. No, it's not, published anywhere from that standpoint, but it is heavily cited with all the resources that you would need to actually go do your own research on what it is that I'm concluding in this article. So this is Mystical Authority Over Scripture, the Theological Legacy of Ellen G. White's Extensive Writings. Now, I'm going to give you a little bit of a sneak peek. Please do subscribe, okay? I'm going to give access to those of you that are financially supporting first, and then I will make, as we go through, I may even do a live working through some of the content. But this is what the article looks like. So I'm not going to read through any of it. It is reasonably long. When I say it's longer, you'll see it's 10 pages, smaller print, but I want to show you the actual footnotes. Okay. This is a lot of footnotes. Okay. There's an extensive amount of footnotes to help you understand where it is that I'm getting the resources and the information from. There is resources from Adventist scholars. There's resources from books that I would be surprised if any of you have read. Some kind of not obscure, but things that are some very good works that really does hold the, I think helps to hold the veracity of my argument. So again, you be the determining nature of that. I would love to have you read it, give me feedback. We'll probably do some live streams on it, whatnot, but it is a fascinating article, and we'll see how that takes. So I do appreciate those of you that have subscribed and that are a part of the financial support side of things. All right. Without any further ado, as we always do, we're going to watch a short clip. Now, this is the second part, specifically dealing with the 2300. Okay, the 2300 evenings, mornings, that side of things. Okay, and so I'm going to get into some extensive dialogue on this whole vision argument that happens. Again, this is a rebuttal response to a 38-minute video that Advent Defense League put out. Jason specifically is making the arguments. So I am going to be addressing Jason, by extension ADL, by extension, since the ADL channel is supposedly defending Adventism. This is also supposedly what the Adventist Church supports. So without any further ado, let's watch the video together. What do you say?
People think that the vision concerns the sanctuary, right? This is another misreading. When we read Daniel chapter 8, right? They say, oh, but when you see the question that is asked, they're only asking about, the vision concerning the sanctuary, right? Because it says, how long shall the vision concerning the daily sacrifice and the transgression of desolation to give both the sanctuary and the host to be trodden underfoot, right? They're not asking about the ram and all of this. He's asking, how long will the vision concerning the daily sacrifice? And so this is the trap where they get into. They say, well, because the question is only about the daily sacrifice being taken away and the transgression set up, right, and the sanctuary being trodden underfoot, it's not talking about the whole thing. And so it's wrong to say, you have to start the time from the time of 457 BC. It doesn't fit. It's only referring to the portion of the daily sacrifice. And
correct, by the way.
And so when they read the book of Maccabees, they say, Maccabees does talk about how Antiochus defiled the sanctuary and did all of these things. But we have to go to the interpretation of the vision, right? It says, and he said unto me, unto 2,300 days. In the original language.
I'm pausing this because I want you to hear what he said. In the original language, I want you to find out if he ever goes to the original language.
That doesn't say days. What it says is evenings and mornings. I think there's some translations that says for 2,300 evenings and mornings, then shall the sanctuary be restored to its rightful state. 2,300 evenings and mornings. So the vision is called the evening and morning, right? When we go down to verse 26, what does the verse say? The vision of the evening and the morning, which was told, is true.
It's true. Yeah.
But when the vision is being explained, where does the vision begin? The ram which thou sawest having two horns are the kings of Media and Persia.
Yeah.
It's the whole vision that is fitting within the 2,300 days, not just the portion about the sanctuary being destroyed. It's the whole vision that is being referred to. The vision starts with the Medes and the Persians.
Okay. So did you get his argument? Okay. It's the whole vision. That's his argument. That starts with the Medes and the Persians. That's his argument. Okay. So now what Jason's argument, okay, from the Advent Defense League, I'm just going to say it in the very beginning so that you understand my perspective. What his argument does is it commits a fundamental hermeneutical fallacy by conflating narrative scope with temporal measurement. Now, that's maybe some academic speech. I'm going to explain what all that means. But he's conflating narrative scope with temporal measurement. Now, Daniel 8 indeed does present a panoramic vision encompassing multiple empires. Like I'm not going to disagree with that. And yes, it does. Now, how you break up Medo, Persia, Greece, Little Horn, like how you we've talked about some of that before, but just because it talks about a panoramic vision, this does not mean that every numerical prophecy within the vision must now encompass the entire historical sequence. That's that confusion, that there's a confusion between literary structure and chronological application. And that is going to undermine it directly undermines sound apocalyptic interpretation, and it violates just good, sound biblical exegesis. Now, I don't mean this to be condescending in any way, okay? But it violates good biblical exegesis, and I have yet to see much good biblical exegesis from Jason's arguments. I know that I make a little bit of, maybe make fun a little bit of some of the statements that he's saying, in that if you're going to say, when you go to the original language, then you need to go to the original language. You don't say, when you go to the original language and then you go to the KJV and you say, well, some translations say this. If you're going to deal with the text, deal with the text. So some of his arguments are going to undermine really good, especially undermine apocalyptic interpretation as it relates to sound biblical exegesis. Now, the claim that 2,300 evenings and mornings cannot confine or be confined to this short Antiochene persecution, just because verse 13 has this question, the vision, okay, as a whole, it rests on, and I need you all to hear this, it rests on a complete misunderstanding, a complete misreading of Hebrew syntax, apocalyptic literature conventions. It shows that Jason is operating from an amateur understanding of apocalyptic literature, and it doesn't properly understand the internal structure of Daniel 8 itself. Now, here is just so that we understand, let me put on the screen real quick the argument that is being made, just so that you all understand what I'm addressing. This is my attempt at steel manning what I believe Jason just said in his number 7 big bombshell evidence, okay? The 2,300 evenings and mornings in Daniel 8:14 cannot be confined to the short Antiochene persecution, because verse 13's question refers to the vision as a whole, including, and he goes through it, he says this at the very end, including the ram, which he said Medo-Persia, the male goat, Greece, and the little horn. Now, I'm not going to deal with what those are and if I agree with his connections to who those are and all that. That's previous episodes I've talked a little bit, and future episodes I'll talk more about that. But his argument now is, therefore, since that's the case, the 2,300 days, evenings and mornings, must represent the entire span of the vision's empires. And that is far beyond the 2nd century. And it's 2nd century because that's the Antiochene kind of connection. Okay. Now, that's what we're going to be addressing directly. Now, before we go there specifically, let's go straight to the text. Let's read some of the text initially as we get started, and then we're going to work through some very granular details. I'm going to share with you some things today that will hopefully help you understand some Hebrew grammar and some details of why I think that there's a better way of understanding this. Now, verse 13 of Daniel 8, this is from the NRSV updated edition, says, "Then I heard a holy one speaking, and another holy one said to the one who spoke," quote, "For how long is this vision concerning the regular burnt offering, the transgression that makes desolate, and the giving over of the sanctuary and host to be trampled?" And I'm going to read 14, then we're going to talk about some grammar structure here. Verse 14 says, "And he answered him, for 2,300 evenings and mornings, then the sanctuary shall be restored to its rightful position." Okay, now, in order to, we're going to go through a couple different sections. I want to first deal with, the one major thing I want to deal with is I want to have what's called a linguistic analysis of Daniel 8:13. And we're going to deal with a couple of different sections. When we say linguistic, we're dealing with the original language. And when you're dealing with language, and I'm just sharing this so everyone's on the same page, if we were dealing with linguistic issues inside of English, we might have to talk about grammar. We might have to talk about syntax. We might have to talk about capitalization and pronunciation and, where to put exclamation marks and question marks. And all those things would be part of the linguistic analysis if it was the English language. We're not dealing with the English language here. We're going to go back to the Hebrew. Okay. And so when you're dealing with the grammatical structure of Daniel 8:13, the Hebrew construction of Daniel 8:13 creates what Hebrew grammarians term, and this is the important thing to hear, construct of specification. It's a construct of specification. Now, this phrase here, and this is what we're going to be focused on, this quote right here. When I'm talking about a construct of specification, I'm going to explain what that means. Okay, this is you'll see down here in the original language. I'm not concerned about how it gets translated. You'll see 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. That means these are the words from right to left. Okay, so this is ad mate, he hazan, ha tamid, ha passe, somem, utet, and then kodes, sabah, and it continues to move through. Okay, so what I'm wanting to deal with here is the actual grammar. Now, when I say a construct of specification, I'm going to explain what that means. The Hebrew construct of specification is it's a nuanced grammatical feature of Hebrew that provides precise clarification within a sentence. It serves to specify the area of application for a noun. And it clarifies a statement by answering questions like in what terms of, or what respect, with respect to what. Okay, it's going to clarify that. Now, the grammatical structure is typically characterized by being a primary noun. It's almost never, I say almost, very rarely is it ever an adjective. But it's primarily a noun that clarifies a statement without implying the meaning. As it can be categorized into two different types. Okay, there can be specification of nature or attribution. One of those two things, nature or attribution. Now, let me give you a for instance. Okay, let me get this pulled up on the screen. And again, I told you guys today's going to get really granular, and I don't do this to confuse. I don't do this to frustrate. I don't do this to make myself look smart. I'm just dealing. Okay. I promise you, I'm not that smart. I'm just looking at what scholars deal with and engage in with regards to the arguments that are being made. Okay. So in one of the things I want to point out here, this is an example. Okay. For instance, in specification of nature, the specification can clarify the entire essence of something. Let me look at Genesis 37:9. He had another dream and told it to his brothers, saying, "Look, I have had another dream. The sun, the moon, and 11 stars were bowing down to me." The 11 stars specifies a precise numerical nature. You're like, well, duh, Mike. Yes, it's a construct of specification. In this particular case, the nominal clause could be directly stated. The stars are 11 is what you could say, okay? So this particular grammatical construct allows for extremely remarkable precision with regards to the Hebrew language. There's no nuance. You're not questioning in the text, well, maybe it's 10, maybe it's 12, maybe it means this, that. No, it's pretty clear, okay? It's 11 stars, so the stars are 11. It's very, very clear, okay? And that enables writers to provide exact and nuanced descriptions that go well beyond just simple nouns, okay? If you just say sun, moon, and stars, this is a clarification where it's not just the sun, it's the sun, the moon, and 11 stars, not 35, it's 11, okay? Construct of specification. The complexity of Hebrew grammatical constructs, and that's just all I'm saying there is you can have lots of different ways that you phrase numbers tied to specifying nouns, okay, in Hebrew. It's a language with great precision. But the complexity of the Hebrew grammatical constructs suggests that there might be a broader discussion about linguistic specificity inside of biblical Hebrew that are not fully captured in these particular sources. So a lot of times scholars that are interested in a more comprehensive understanding, they may end up exploring additional research on Hebrew syntactical nuances. So I'm saying this to be highly detailed and very specific, because when we get to Daniel, I want you to understand the construct, okay? So that when you get to Daniel 8:13, then I heard a holy one speaking, and another holy one said to the one that spoke, "For how long?" Okay, this "for how long," this is ad mate, for how long, until when. This is going to introduce the temporal question. This is introducing the temporal question. When you get to how long, ad mate, and then he hazan, which is the vision. Now, it's how long is this vision? That would be how it gets translated in English. But I want you to understand, look down here in the bottom. This is ha, there's an article and then a noun. This is how long, the vision. Okay? The vision, hazan, it serves as this general category. We don't know exactly what it is. It's the vision. It's general category. Then you have after it, you have this concerning the regular, okay, ha tamid. Now we've got a lot of words in here, and I want to point this out. You'll see down here there's a dot. That means that there is no Hebrew word that gets translated as concerning. That's just a translation decision, okay, to try to communicate in English what would be understood with regards to the kind of the way the language works. Now we have ha, another article. I'm going to talk about the articles later on. Ha, tamid. Now tamid in your translation is going to be understood. Sometimes you'll see continual offerings. Sometimes it'll get translated as burnt offerings, regular burnt offerings, continual offerings. There's a lot of different ways that it gets translated, but here we have the continual offerings, the regular burnt offerings, and the transgression. Okay, ha, again, this is the conjunction. This is the joining word, conjoining the two. Ha, pasa, and then you have desolation, soman, to appall. Okay, so you've got this temporal question, the vision, until when. You've got a general category, the vision itself. And then you have this, these detailed, it's the article with these nouns, the continual offering and the transgression that desolate, that functions, and I'm going to have a hard time saying this, it functions as what's called an epigetical limitation. All that means is it's not, it's zeroing in, it's not all inclusive out. Okay. All right. Now, this construction, again, I told you I was going to go granular detail. This construction is not a Mike Colburn made this up stuff. Yes. Thank you. Yes. Thank you. I have such a hard time saying that word, but you're exactly right. That's what I'm trying to say. Okay. This construct is not Mike Colburn making anything up. If you, I will not be able to say these, this particular couple of names, but there are a couple of scholars by the name of Gesenius, Kutzar. I think they're German, to be honest. There's a Hebrew grammar analysis book. In fact, let me just put this on the screen so you can kind of see this as it pulls up. Should get it soon here. Yep, there we go. All right, so this is, again, all that we're looking at here. Again, I encourage you guys, this is, I don't know how to say these names, okay? Just be very frank. But this is dealing with Hebrew grammar, okay? And what they do is they identify this construction as what's called a restrictive opposition. The grammatical structure restricts rather than expands. That's what's going on. And this is in 131. The way this is organized is, you've got all these syntax of a noun. This is 131 opposition. And then it's actually, as you go through the details of this, I'm not going to go through all this because this will probably put everyone to sleep. But you get kind of some of these examples and the way it works that kind of pulls in the details of what we're talking about. Okay. So my point is that this structure, from a grammar standpoint, restricts the temporal focus rather than expands it. So right off the bat, Jason's argument violates grammatical understanding of the Hebrew language. Now, I'm going to assume he just doesn't know, because he says he goes to the language, but he never goes to the language. Okay, so I'm going to assume that he either doesn't know. I don't think he's being intentionally misleading, but guys, you need to focus on this. This is the reason why scholars are almost unanimous that the 2300 days deals with the Antiochene structure, almost unanimous. Not all, but almost, okay? Now, there is another part of this argument. This is this is dealing with the Hebrew participle. There is what's called a terminus ad quem construction. Let's go back to this structure here. Okay, ad mate. When you have this structure until when followed by hazem. When you have that in Daniel 8:13, this creates again another issue. It's again what grammarians call terminus ad quem construction, which is again it's a complex. This is just adding to the conversation. It's a complex grammatical and interpretive challenge that focuses. This is a part of the same argument. It focuses the determination of the point at which is being terminated at the end. You're going to get this in, guys. And I know I'm going deep. I know that someone's like, "Hey, this is way too deep." You don't have to go this deep because you're going to see in the argument the way it comes out in English. I'm telling you from the grammar, the reasons behind. But if you just go to verse 14, you're going to see it in the English as well. And he answered them for 2,300 evenings and mornings. Then the sanctuary will be restored. That is what's called the terminus ad quem. That's the end. Okay. How long? It's this period of time. Then it will end. It will terminate. That's the point of the construct. So I'm going through all of this grammar, geeking out with the grammar, but you can see it in the way they translate it. Okay. So there's a limitation. There's a terminal limitation. It's a restriction of limitation. And then we know that there's an endpoint. And we see that not just because we're Hebrew grammarians, we can geek out on it, but we see it because the translators cue you on this if you pay attention. Okay. Now, I get that this is highly technical, but it's important to help you understand why I get so adamant about these erroneous, fallacious ideas that come from Advent Defensely. It's not just me picking on them. It's they just don't understand how this functions. Okay? We're not when we do things on the thinking cup here, we're not pulling up a King James Bible next to a Strong's Concordance and trying to claim that, or whatever English Bible that Jason pulls up on the screen. Because last time he kind of freaked out because I said that they had a fixation on the KJV Bible. You can use the KJV Bible, friends, but go to the original manuscript. The problem with the KJV Bible is that you're going to go to the Masoretic text because that's the text. You're not going to go to some of these other texts, these other manuscripts behind it, because the KJV only deals with one set of manuscripts. So again, you're kind of hamstringing yourself if you're only dealing with the KJV with the archaic technology that they're using. So this terminus ad quem grammatical structure supports the interpretation that the 2300, I'm just saying that, the 2300 marks, it gets marked by the end of a crisis, by the end of something. It terminates somewhere. And we're going to talk about the details of where and how. What it does not do, it's not how long the vision is. It's the terminus of it. I could quit right here. His entire argument is blown out by just this one acknowledgement. Okay. But I'm going to continue to show why I have a strong opinion on this. Now, I am not going to geek out on, I'm going to say, some of you may not even be aware of Akkadian inscriptions or Ugaritic texts. Some of you may be more familiar by the term Second Temple apocalyptic literature, but Akkadian royal inscriptions, Ugaritic texts. Ugarit was a region north of kind of northeast. It was a harbor town northeast of Canaan. That, yes, they're cognate languages. All of these cognate languages, they deal with some of these limiting structures for temporal prophecies. All of them do. The easiest way to see this is go to other Second Temple apocalyptic literature. You can go to 4th Ezra 12, chapter 12, 10 to 12. You can go to 1st Enoch. All of these, they employ this identical grammatical convention when dealing with apocalyptic literature. And that's because this is an ancient Near Eastern literature construct. This is normal, okay? Now, I want to put a word of caution, just a word of caution out there for any of my, I'm assuming that there are some Adventist friends that are watching currently. Here's my word of caution, and this comes from my heart, okay? Even some of my engagement with former Adventists that have had an extensive amount of connection to the Adventist roots. This is going to come from my heart. It's going to come from my own research personally. And much of what I'm going to say can be supported by many different scholars that work in the field of apocalyptic literature. When it comes to dating texts, okay, because many of you have dialogued with me privately or even publicly. Some of you, and I am going to do a video on the dating and authorship of Daniel. I probably will get some aggression and hate from some people, okay? Because I'm not interested in, in strumming someone else's violin and, just kind of going along. I'm going to share with you the details and the data. That's a video that will come in the future, I promise, okay? But when you're dating texts based on specific motifs, things like the 2300, things like, when I say dating, this is because Adventists like to say, we know that it starts. There's a whole nother video that one of the guys on ADL does. It has to start at 457. When anyone says that, you need to be cautious because apocalyptic literature is not like that. It's challenging. It's very difficult to find a precise, exact starting point and a precise, exact ending point. Ergo, like 457 BC and 1844. Finding the exact points for a literary usage is very, very complex. It's very difficult. And here's the only thing I would say is if you do have beginning and ending points, those are what's called, just from a grammar standpoint, terminus aquae, terminus ad quem. Those are markers of beginning and endings. If you have very clear ones, it still becomes difficult to determine when a particular linguistic or literary feature was actively used. It's still really challenging. I'm going to give you an illustration to this, okay? We can support this challenge and this caution by some archaeological studies. There is what's called a terminus ad quem, okay? The endpoint that we know is the endpoint per se for a royal seal of Israel. The endpoint by archaeology, I'm going to put this on my screen. The endpoint, give me a second, let it come up on the screen real quick. Okay, so this is coming from an entire book that is dedicated to Old Testament and the archaeologists, okay? This is ancient Near Eastern, recovering it through archaeology. So this is just dealing with archaeological discoveries. You're going to see right here, okay, this argument or this discussion. These are just kind of points This is in a glossary, okay? Terminus ad quem, the latest limits, okay? Before which something must be dated. The terminus ad quem for a royal seal of Israel would be 721 to 722, somewhere in there, 722 to 21 BC, when the kingdom of Israel ceased to exist. Now, even though that's a terminus ad quem, we don't have the precise month, the day, the exact year. It's a range, and it's a rough time period. We just know that from an archaeological standpoint, the royal seal of the kingdom of David ceased around that time. That's what we know. So we know that it's a range. It's a rough time period. So anytime someone says this is the exact day, month, year, and again, I'm stating this with specificity because this is exactly what Adventists do when it comes to October 22, 1844. The exact time. That's not the way this works. This is poor exegesis. It's inserting an ideology into the text that isn't there. All right. Let's get back to this discussion. Let's keep moving just a little bit further. Okay, let's talk about, looking at my notes here. If we get back to the text itself, the definite article here, okay, this ha-hazan, the definite article with tamid, the noun here, the regular burnt offering, the continual offering. Then we have another definite article, and we have pesa. This definite article pattern in Daniel 8:13 creates what they call a semantic unity around the cultic desecration theme. This is not a broader imperial. When I say imperial, I'm talking about this goes from the Medes and the Persians, and it's not about the larger imperial sequence. This is dealing with a cultic desecration theme, and we see that in the construct of the articles and the nouns. Okay, again, the vision, the offering, the continual offering, the evil doing. Okay, this is identical to grammatical constructions that we find in Jeremiah, for example, where we get very specific judgments that are isolated from general prophecy. Okay. Now, let's keep moving on kind of my rebuttal to this. Let's talk about apocalyptic literary patterns. When we're dealing with apocalyptic literature, things like, and when we say apocalyptic literature, most of the time people think end time, meaning like day of the Lord. It's not necessarily day of the Lord language. Okay. It's not necessarily the end of the world eschaton language. It's usually judgment related language. Okay. There's a general sequence with regards to, especially with Daniel here, with regards to apocalyptic literature. Here's the sequence. We have an indication of the circumstances, what we would call a setting. There's a setting, a description of the vision itself. Then we have next we have this request for an interpretation of the vision. And usually that interpretation is usually motivated by some sort of fear. Then comes the interpretation usually, and it's almost always provided by some sort of an angelic messenger. When I say angel, all that really means is a messenger, someone who is a supernatural. It doesn't have to be supernatural, but it's some sort of a messenger. The ones that are interpreting these visions apocalyptically are almost always, that I can remember, supernatural. And then we have the concluding material that may include the seers, meaning the prophet's reaction or instructions. Okay, that's usually the structure, the literary pattern inside of apocalyptic literature. Now, in literary structure, in this apocalyptic literary structure, anytime you have numerical revelations, numbers that are inside these sequences, they almost consistently pertain to the climactic element. That they become whatever the climactic element is. Numbers are generally associated with them. They are not usually generated with historical sequence. Okay, they're not usually like, oh, it's just kind of a big overarching thing. It's usually tied to kind of the climactic event. Okay. This is a very well-established convention, and it's an ancient Near Eastern apocalyptic literature, ancient Near East convention inside of literary apocalyptic literature. Okay. Now we have to understand that apocalyptic literature serves a very specific purpose. This is part of understanding genre. What is the purpose? The purpose is to interpret present earthly circumstances in light of the supernatural world and the future. And it's designed, the function is to influence both the understanding and the behavior of the audience by means, when I say audience, the ones that are receiving it in that time period, by means of divine authority. That's the purpose. So if we have to keep this genre inside of the function of why Daniel was writing this, and I say Daniel, those of you that have been engaging with me privately know that I don't hold to the idea that Daniel wrote all of Daniel. That's a whole, that'll come in when we're dealing with dating and the authorship. All right. We got a lot of good comments going on inside of the chat, and I appreciate that. Yeah, it's good stuff. Thanks for those of you that are here that are commenting. Thank you for being here and commenting, keeping the conversation going. I appreciate that. Okay, so let's dig a little. Let's look at kind of comparing some of this apocalyptic literature. Let's look at a few other places. When you deal with ancient Near East apocalyptic text, now, yes, Daniel is canonical ancient Near Eastern text, but I want to look at some others. I'm going to do a comparative analysis here. How does this function in other places? And I'm just going to step in real quick. Yes, Daniel is written in two different languages. There are sections that are written in Aramaic, and there are sections that are written in Hebrew. Chapter 8 is written in Hebrew. Okay. So it's a good question. So when we're dealing with ancient Near Eastern apocalyptic text, numerical prophecies, again, I've said this already, they measure crisis duration. They don't measure imperial succession. That's not the function of numerical values inside of apocalyptic text. Now, we could just go to, let's go to Ezra 10. No, Ezra, hang on. Let's go to, not Ezra. Well, I'm not going to be able to put that one on. You can find it in 4th Ezra. This is apocalyptic literature. I thought I was going to be able to go to it quickly. I'll just kind of mention these for you. I thought I was going to be able to put these on the screen. But if you're taking notes or if you want to go look at this, this is 4th Ezra, chapter 12, 11 and 12. Now, these are non-canonical apocalyptic texts. We're doing a comparison, okay? In those two verses, the eagle visions, okay, The eagle visions are visions, the time periods that measure the final persecution. They're not the entire Roman sequence. Okay, when you look at those texts. If you go to places like 1 Enoch 91, again, these are not canonical texts, but if you go to 1 Enoch 91, 12 to 17, the weeks apocalypse, it focuses temporal measurements on climactic oppression phrases. That's what's going on in the text. You can go to 2 Baruch 36 to 40. It's a long section. You have duration prophecies that calibrate specific judgments. And I want you to hear this. In apocalyptic literature, numbers tend to deal with the amount of time either until judgment or the amount of time of oppression. It deals with kind of the climactic moment, and it helps you understand when things are going to end or the time period, okay, that things are going to function. So when we look at Jason's understanding, and by extension, ADL's understanding, because he's representing ADL, and then by extension, the Seventh-day Adventist Church. Now, those that are Adventists that are watching, you might go, hey, that's not me, okay? All I'm saying is take that up with ADL, because Jason is representing ADL, and ADL is by extension supposed to be defending Advent defense, okay? They're defending the Adventist position. Now, if they're violating their own, understanding and the Adventist position, take that up with them. Complain to them about it, okay? But their interpretation, Jason's understanding, violates apocalyptic literary conventions that are very clear across Second Temple literature. This whole idea that has to start in 457, it has to end in 1844 interpretation, that is laughably ignorant to the way these types of things function. It violates the literary concepts of the day. Yes, Andy Mac. That's not my Adventism. They're not arguing for mine. That's exactly right. So it further shows their lack of ability to keep things in context. And part of the reason why I pick on this is because when an Adventist tries to keep it in context, what they mean is they're keeping it in the Adventist context, because they can't violate that part, because their dear prophetess Ellen G. White makes statements on this, and if they denigrate something that's the Adventist position, they're denigrating Ellen White. They are putting her down. All right, let's look at a few other things here. I want to look at the structural analysis, or the sequence, the clear literary progression of this text. Now, we have in Daniel 8, verses 3 to 8, notice that there is a subject, ram and goat, successive empires, Media, Persia, Greece. What is the temporal focus? It's a historical sequence. Then when you get to verses 9 to 12, you get the little horn. What is the summary of it? Persecution, desecration. There's a crisis period. There's a temporal focus, okay? When we get to verses 13 and 14, you have this angelic question and answer that's going on. What is the response? Well, the summary of it is the duration of desecration. You get the temporal focus. And what is it? 2,300 evenings and mornings. Then finally, in verses 15 all the way through 26, you get Gabriel's interpretation, which the summary is clarification, and it's a clarification that's centered around the little horn. Specifically, the focus of Gabriel's interpretation is the final king emphasis. That's the temporal focus itself. Okay. Now, one other thing, actually, let me get this back on. I want to look at some other comparative kind of perspectives. I want to go to just show this other pattern here to show you kind of what's happening consistently across Daniel's apocalyptic visions. These are called Danielic patterns. In Daniel 7:25, we have this full vision scope. We have the four beasts and the Ancient of Days. The how long question, how long? That's the little horn's persecution, and we were given durations, time times half a time. When you get to Daniel 8, 13, and 14, what do you have from the full scope? It's the ram, goat, little horn. How long? Desecration, sanctuary desecration. You get the temporal, the duration measurement, which is 2,300 evenings, mornings. When you get to Daniel chapter 12, 6 and 7, you have the full vision scope. So you have Michael's intervention plus this end time. It's end time tribulation, end time resurrection that kind of goes on in that particular chapter. What is the how long question? The scope of the question? Well, it's the final tribulation. And then you have the duration and measure. They give you time times half a time. Okay. In every case, the Danielic temporal measurements calibrate the crisis periods. It does not calibrate the imperial sequences. I want that to settle in. In every single case, the numbers, the numerical measurements, the temporal measurements deal with the crisis periods. How long? This time period. How long? This time period. How long? That's the part that you've got to see as a Danielic pattern. And nothing, and this is what frustrates me, nothing that Jason said deals with this stuff because he just isn't aware, totally blinded by the challenges of this text. This is a beautifully complicated text, but there are unique patterns that pop up that help, that you would only understand if you understand the original language, if you understand the challenges going on in the text itself. Now, I want to look at, remember I said before, I said that the climax of it usually is tied to the numerical part. So the climax is really important in understanding the narrative of the text. In Daniel 8 specifically, Daniel 8 is going to follow, it's a classical, like dramatic structure. It's a drama that kind of unfolds. And it's a specific structure. You have an exposition. There's a historical survey that goes on. Next, it moves to a rising action. There's an increase in persecution. Then you have the climactic moment. This is the sanctuary desecration inside of Daniel 8. Then you have a resolution to it. There's divine deliverance that kind of resolves the overall drama in the narrative. The 2,300 evenings and mornings, that measure, it's that again, I don't believe them to be literal days. The evenings and mornings measurement, it measures the climactic crisis that's going on. It's not the entire dramatic arc. It's not the whole thing. It measures very specifically in the narrative, in the scope of the narrative. It measures that that specific climactic crisis itself. Okay, it would be considered entirely out of literary context, to posit that the 2,300 evenings and mornings should be understood as days and then as years, prophetic years, and then to move the Danielic audience to believe that this is going to conclude in 1844. This is asinine when it comes to interpretation. It's preposterous. I mean, I want you to think about this for a second. If you're Daniel and you go, how long is this going to last? And you conclude that what Daniel is supposed to understand and what the audience is supposed to understand is, hey guys, this is going to last for 2.5 millennia. That's how long it's going to last. Have assurance. It's going to last for 2,300 years. And if I was the one hearing that, I'd be like, well, why does it matter for me? Who cares? I mean, it's preposterous. And it misses the purpose of the drama that's going on. This is a dramatic structure. It's a artistic literary function that creates a crescendo effect in the literature. You have broad historical movements, narrow to focused crisis in the narrative, and then it resolves with a divine deliverance. And the deliverance is the point. That's the point. That's the reason why it's so important. That's why it would be reassuring. All right, Mike, you got to calm down here. All right. I want to talk a little bit more on why this is. If you remember last time, I think it was last time, I'm getting all these different videos kind of messed up and confused a little bit, but inevitably in this conversation, especially from an Adventist perspective, and Jason does go into this in the 38-minute video. He makes the connection. I believe it was last time that we watched it, where he makes the connection with evenings and mornings and goes into Genesis. So I'm gonna share with you why I think that is important, but not in the way that he posits it. Okay. This is what's called divine sovereignty. And this is over suffering. The whole point of these visions is to communicate to the audience from an apocalyptic standpoint, the time period they're in, the suffering, the issues that are going on, that God is sovereign over the suffering that they are going through. And the evenings and mornings formula creates an intentional parallel to Genesis 1, but not in the way that the Adventists like to do it. Just as God measured, God measures creation days very precisely. Evening and morning, there was the first day. Evening and morning, second day. Evening and morning. So just in that regard, he also measures persecution and the boundaries of persecution precisely. He knows when they will end. There is a temporal ending to the suffering. This is a theological motif that deals with judgment, persecution, and divine sovereignty. It's the divine control over suffering duration. And we see this in probably two of the most common places you're going to see this, but you're going to see it all over in Scripture. You're going to see this in Job's trial. You're going to see it in the Babylonian exile of 70 years. But across Scripture, it supports this very bounded terminus rather than an extended chronology of suffering. How long is it going to last? It's just going to keep going. It's going to keep going. 2.5 millennia, it's going to keep going. No. And again, I'm going to say this again, just to let this settle in. Imagine if you were in the Babylonian exile. The prophet Daniel receives this message, and you're hearing it for the first time. Okay? How long, Daniel? How long until this suffering ends? How long until the vision of the 2300? How long? How long? And his response is, and I'm going to paraphrase this for Adventists here. His response is, well, I'll tell you how long, Daniel. 2,300 years. It's not going to be until October 22, 1844. That's how long. Why would I care? If that was the case and that's what I heard, God, you're in control, Lord. How long? How long until the suffering ends and persecution? Well, like 20, almost 2,500 years from now, that's when it's going to end. You know what my response would be? Who cares? I guess it doesn't matter. I'm going to be dead, long gone. What does that have to do with providing any level of comfort, any level of care directly to the Babylonian exile? Again, it is preposterous. The Adventist interpretation that moves from 2,300 evenings and mornings to days to years to 457 to 1844 is a complete anachronism. It's foreign to the text. It's derived outside the text from Ellen White and injected into the text. It's horrendous. It's a massacre of the text. All right. Whew. Let's talk about I'm looking through, I'm off script now. So I hope you know what? I hope he's listening. I don't know if he's listening. I hope he is. I don't know. It's interesting that we had one rebuttal. They did one rebuttal that was like 2.5 hours. They spent 45 minutes dealing. First time the introductory was like about AI, which I'm going to have to do some sort of video on their use of AI because it's just horrible. But there's been no other response yet. I don't know how long. Maybe it's just taking them forever to deal with the issues because of how granular we're going. I don't know. But I have yet to hear any engagement. And I'm sure they will. Okay. Okay. Let's look at, I've covered some of this already. We already talked about restrictive opposition. Let's talk about Gabriel's interpretation. Let's talk about the framework for Gabriel's interpretation real quick. Let's go back to the text. So we get the statement, then we get kind of moving down in here, the Daniel 8, and he was speaking to me. I fell into a trance, face on the ground. Then he touched me and set me on my feet. He said, listen, I will tell you, okay, for it refers to the appointed time of the end. Now, I'll get to a comment on the time of the end. Just hold that thought. We'll get there. But I want to look at Gabriel's kind of interpretation from verses 20 to 22. As for the ram that you saw with the two horns, these are the kings of Media and Persia. The male goat is the king of Greece, and the great horn between its eyes is the first king. As for the horn that was broken, in place of which 4 others arose, 4 kingdoms shall arise from his nation, but not with his power. So there's 3 verses here. There is a brief mention of ram, goat empires. Okay, just notice that. I'm mentioning this because Gabriel's explanation as we go through it from verse 19 all the way through 26 is going to demonstrate proportional emphasis. So first, these first 3, there's a brief mention of ram, goat, just brief, okay? And then there's some other aspects of it. When you get into verse 23 through 25, at the end of their rule, when the transgression, we won't talk about what there is. That's a whole nother discussion that ADL likes to massacre. At the end of their rule, when the transgressions have reached their full measure, that's divine judgment language. A king of bold countenance shall arise, skilled in intrigue. He shall grow strong in power, shall cause fearful destruction, and shall succeed in what he does. He shall destroy the powerful and the people of the holy ones. That's the covenant community. By his cunning, he shall make deceit prosper under his hand, and in his own mind he shall be great. Without warning, he shall destroy many and shall even rise up against the prince of princes, but he shall be broken and not by human hands. So all the way to verse 25, this is the detailed focus is on a king, a king of fierce countenance. Okay, this is 3 verses. Previously, we had 3 verses that were dedicated to ram goat empires. Now we have 3 verses that are dedicated to Antiochus, this king, this fierce king. Whoever you know what I think that is, but that's the 3. That's the, again, proportional emphasis on what Gabriel is describing. Then we get into one verse that deals with the vision of the evenings and mornings explicitly. Okay, this says that has been told is true. As for you, seal up the vision, for it refers to many days from now. So verse 26, the vision of the evenings and mornings, explicitly links, here it is, explicitly links this vision to the numerical duration. We know that it's connected. This evening and mornings is connected to this section right here. It goes through the text. It's very clear. This is an interpretive pattern that's part of the angel considered the vision of the evenings and mornings to consist precisely with the sacrilege period. It's not this multi-century imperial sequence. It's very clear in the pattern. I don't, and by the way, with regards to the desecration, okay, the desecration itself, when we get into verse, I'll put it on the screen one more time here. The vision, this part of the vision of the evenings and mornings that has been told to you is true. As for you, seal up the vision. It refers to many days from now. What does he do? Okay, he becomes overwhelmed with sickness and sadness. I don't think that we understand, okay, the vision of the evenings and mornings dealt with the desecration of the temple. And I don't think oftentimes we understand the importance to the Jewish people that the temple had. If the temple is destroyed, if it's ransacked, if it is desecrated, then they cannot worship their God without it. Not only that, their God is not with them. The temple signifies that their God is with them. This temple sacrilege would have made Daniel absolutely sick to his stomach. Again, just following the understanding in context, I think is really helpful. Notice that we have the angel that's explaining that this vision deals with many days. Let's go to, I'll put it on the screen one more time, just so you can see. Verse 26, the vision of the evenings. This is the same phrase, ha-ereb, ha-bokur. The visions of the evenings and mornings that was told to you is true. Seal up the vision, for it refers. Now, do you notice that there is a Hebrew way of saying days? This is yamim or yom. It's the same connection as days in Genesis. Yom. It's not this here. It's not ereb boker. Those do not mean days. I'm making a very distinct point on this. Notice that the vision deals with many days from now. It does not say many years from now. That's a different Hebrew word. It would be horrible to now say, well, days here, we got to insert a prophetic year into the equation. No. Why? Because we know here, again, the same word is how many days he was sick for days. For some days, not many days, for some. Friends, the text is very clear. There is nothing in the text that states that the angel was telling Daniel that this would be years. When I say years, this is going to be 2,300 years from now. There's nothing in the text that says that. I don't know how else to be very clear on this. Daniel is sick for the same word, yom, same word. Many days, some days. This is a relatively close period of time from Daniel. If you're going to make an interpretive decision, like Jason does with regards to days being years and so on and so forth, and ADL does, and by extension, the Adventist Church does. If you're going to make that, then my challenge to Jason and ADL and the Adventist Church is be consistent. If you're going to claim that 2,300 evenings and mornings converts to days and then days becomes years, then you need to be consistent with the rest of these. Where clearly it's days, those should be years too. You have to be consistent, or you have to at least allow the text to give you a reason, a contextual, text-driven reason to make the leap from evenings and mornings to days to years from 457 to 1844. Otherwise, you're just playing textual gymnastics is all you're doing, which is really what happens inside the Adventist framework. All right, as we tend to do each time I have this discussion or each episode, I like to mention that while we're talking about text-driven understanding, I do think it's important that we understand the Jewish reception of the text. The earliest interpreters, closest to the historical events, is where we're going next, okay? I'm going to go to First Maccabees. The closest historical event, the interpreters that are going to understand or at least interpret this text unanimously connect Daniel's numbers to Antiochus' specific persecution. First Maccabees 4, 52, all the way to 54 links the 3 years to defilement in prophetic, okay? In prophetic fulfillment. So early in the morning on the 25th day of the 9th month, which is the they rose and offered sacrifice. They connect this to the burnt offering at that very season, and on that very day that the nations had profaned it, it was dedicated. This is where Hanukkah comes from. We also see it, that's First Maccabees, okay? We see it in Second Maccabees, 10 verse 5. It happened at the same day on which the sanctuary had been profaned. Purification of the sanctuary took place. This is the 25th day of the same month, which is Shizlev. So it connects the temple cleansing to Daniel's timeline. The other place that you can go to Josephus, Antiquities 12.7.6. I'm not going to go to it here. Again, if you need, this is a great place to insert this. Any of you watching right now, if you're not a part of the Discord channel, Adventist or not, okay, we'd love to have you scan the code in the upper right corner. Join the Discord channel. If you're an Adventist and all you want to do is debate Adventism, let us know. We have a dedicated channel for that. We would love to insert you into that, and you are welcome to work through and debate and support and provide the arguments. We'd love to have you. If you're wanting any of this reference work, if you're wanting, hey, Mike, I'd really love to read Josephus Antiquities, message me in Discord. I'm happy to share it with you. You read it. I say this all the time. Don't take my word for it, please. I don't think you're going to ever hear ADL say this. Don't take my word for it. Go study it. I believe what I believe, not because someone told me this is the way it is, but because I've studied it. And you're going to have to bring, and this is Jason, this is Edwin. Guys, you're going to have to bring a lot stronger arguments to the table to convince me of to convince me otherwise from the table of the mountain of evidence that this is dealing with the Antiochus, little horn. Now, what we talked about was that's early, that would be contemporary Jewish reception. Okay, those are just three examples. First Maccabees, second Maccabees, Josephus, Antiquities. We also have the Qumran evidence. Now, Qumran's going to come in when I do the video on dating. We're going to talk about the Qumran community and how that plays a role in it. There are three basic things that the Dead Sea Scrolls at the Qumran community, they are a crucial. And guys, the Dead Sea Scrolls is just a side note, okay? Not in my notes. It's really important to understand that the Dead Sea Scrolls were discovered in 1930s, 30-ish, 40-ish. It's in that time period, okay? If the Dead Sea Scrolls hadn't been yet discovered, which helps us to have evidence of what I'm about to share with you, you have to understand that this is this is the discovering of the Dead Sea Scrolls was after Ellen White died. She didn't have this. None of the academic community had it. This is recent academic work in the last, literally in the last 90 years. Okay, what we're about to reference. And the Dead Sea Scrolls, it's going to provide very crucial contemporary, this is very modern, very contemporary witness showing that Jewish communities understood Daniel's prophecies as addressing immediate historical crisis. They did not understand it as eschatological events, as 1844, as like that is such an anomaly. That is a massacring of the text. I'm going to keep saying it. Now, if you want to do research on this, okay, you're going to have to get in the Discord channel. You're going to have to connect with me because I'm just not going to go into this kind of detail and look at the scrolls on the screen today. But here's the scrolls. 4Q174. That's the Florilegian scroll. That particular scroll is going to interpret Danielic time periods as bounded persecution phases. 4Q174. By the way, when you're looking at the scrolls for this, anytime you're doing a textual, critical textual or textual criticism, that's the right word. 4Q, 11Q, whatever it is, the 4 represents the cave that it was found in. The Q is Qumran. Okay, so this is the 4th cave at Qumran, and then you have the actual description, like scroll 173 or whatever it might be, because there was tons of scrolls discovered, and a lot of them were fragmented and had issues. But this is so the first one is 4Q174. The second one is 11Q, so it's the 11th cave. Q13. This is actually the Melchizedek scroll, which is fascinating. Okay. But the Melchizedek scroll, what it does is it shows Second Temple Jews consistently reading Daniel's numbers as measuring specific oppression periods. It not this multi-century, 2,300 year concept. Okay. Now, another one that was found in the Dead Sea Scrolls is called the Pesherim, and these are biblical commentaries, the way we would understand them. Okay, the Peshers are early Jewish commentary notes on books of the Bible. These Pesherim at Qumran consistently applied Danielic time periods as well to contemporary persecution experiences. So we get pretty not only good, but remember that the Dead Sea Scrolls predate Christ. The Dead Sea Scrolls predate the Masoretic texts that are the text that the King James Bible, for instance, utilizes. So Masoretic texts are the Masoretic priests, the Masoretes, that were, and I forget the dates. I don't want to give you the wrong dates and just say them off the top of my head, but the Masoretic texts are post-Christ. The Dead Sea Scrolls, I think, gave us several hundred years, 200 to 300 years earlier dating for some of these materials. So really important, okay? Here's the critical point. The critical point here is that there is absolutely zero. There is no pre-Christian Jewish source. Zero. I want to be very clear. There is zero. Zip, zero, zilch. Pre-Christian Jewish sources that extends Daniel's temporal figures to encompass these imperial like sequences. Okay, this 2,300 year idea. That interpretation appears first, or dealing with imperial sequences, it shows up first in later Christian apocalyptic traditions, which is a clear departure, whether or not you agree with it or not. This is post-Christ. It's a clear departure from the original Jewish understanding. Now, I have heard some say, well, Mike, why would you accept Jewish understanding? Because they're the ones that crucified the Messiah. That's just a horrible argument, okay? I'm just telling you historically the reality of the circumstances. Don't make those horrible arguments like that. All right. Now, the other thing I want to say with regards to texts, okay? Dexter, that's hilarious. Yeah, last time I checked, when I say zero, the word zero means zero. Last time I checked. That's what I mean. Last time I checked, nothing means nothing. So the other thing that we've got to understand with regards to manuscript tradition, okay, we've talked about the Dead Sea Scrolls. The other manuscript tradition that's really important with this dialogue is the Septuagint. Now, yes, the Septuagint is a translation. I get it. Totally understand it. Yes, it's a Greek translation of the Hebrew text. The Septuagint translation of Daniel 8:14 in Greek, it consistently renders the passage in ways that support, again, in the original language, that support these bounded persecution understandings. Early Greek-speaking Jews understood the temporal scope as limited, not expansive. So, and I want to be very clear, because if ADL ever kind of balks on this particular thing, my challenge is, when I'm talking about the Septuagint, I'm talking about the Greek manuscripts of the Septuagint. Go to the Greek, okay? Don't start throwing at me English translations of the Greek and then saying, see, this isn't right. The Greek language in the Septuagint understands these as temporal scopes being limited, not expansive. There is also the last part of this manuscript tradition kind of understanding. There are rabbinic receptions. Now, rabbinic receptions are just rabbis, okay? Early rabbinic literature. When I say early rabbinic literature, I'm talking about like Seder Olam Rabbah, early midrashic understandings. They are going to consistently interpret Daniel's time periods as measuring specific persecution phases. This is all very consistent, friends. There is no pre-medieval Jewish source. There's none. Pre-medieval Jewish source that extends these figures into a multi-century imperial sequence. Now, why am I making such a big deal about this? Because the idea that 2300 is a multi-century imperial sequence, 2300 years, whether or not you start at 457 or something else, that concept is very recent. It's post-medieval. It's 1844 on. It's a very modern, and when you study where it came from and why, now it's going to be really important. I showed you the upcoming article that I've got coming out. Okay. This article right here that I mentioned, I'm going to show you all these. This article, actually, I could just share this. This article right here is going to give you a real good understanding of why the early church interpreted some of these things the way they did and why Ellen White plays a role, why it's so important. Okay. I really think that it's going to do a good job of helping everyone understand why the 1844 disappointment was so crucial to Adventists interpreting it the way they did, which is very obscure from the way it's traditionally been understood. Now, I'm going to go through as we finish up, we're getting close. I told you today was going to be a little bit longer. We're getting close. But as we close down, I want to do a very specific critique on Jason's approach to this concept. And this is geared specifically to Jason's arguments, okay, in the video itself. This would be a great place to pause, go back and watch the video itself, if anyone's watching it moving forward, so that you can get why I'm saying what I'm saying, okay? The first area I'm going to critique Jason on is Jason makes a telescoping hermeneutic error. Now, if you were on with Wendy Witter, she makes a comment about telescoping. This is not this. What she said is not like Jason makes an error in understanding how to telescope. Okay. So he makes this error. He applies what we might term, or at least what I think he's doing, as a telescoping hermeneutic, but it contradicts Daniel's own literary patterns. What Jason assumes, he assumes that the narrative scope determines the chronological scope. The narrative scope determines it. That's a methodological inconsistency that violates very clear apocalyptic interpretation methods. It violates the text, okay? What Wendy Witter talked about in my interview with her, which we're hoping to have back on, and I'm locking down probably 1st of December, just so you all know, we'll have Dr. Jerry Gladson on the show. He's already agreed to come on. We're just nailing down the days, where we will be dealing with Daniel and specific arguments that the Adventist system makes to it. But Wendy Witter's argument for telescoping was a good and proper way of understanding. What Jason does violates apocalyptic interpretation. The second area of critique is his approach. Jason's hermeneutical inconsistencies create his own internal contradictions. When I say internal, I'm talking about the text itself, okay? Let me show you what I mean. Let's go to Daniel 8:13. And let me show you kind of the inconsistencies. If this Ha-Hazan, the vision, if Ha-Hazan, this vision, the vision, in Daniel 8:13 includes everything, if that's the case, and that is Jason's argument, if it includes everything, then the question is, why doesn't Gabriel's interpretation in verses 20 to 25 spend equal amounts of time on all of it? If this is dealing with everything, why does the interpretation provide very specific portions of elements. Why doesn't it deal with it equally? That's the first question now. There's internal inconsistencies, okay? Second part would be, why then do parallel passages like Daniel 7:25, parallel passages like Daniel 12:7, parallel passages that measure, why do these parallel passages measure only final persecution if the pattern, as Jason concludes, should be comprehensive? It deals with the whole thing. Why? This is again, I'm exposing the internal contradictions and inconsistencies in Jason's ADLs in the Adventist hermeneutic. Lastly, if the 2300 evening mornings, if it measured the entire historical panorama of the vision, this would represent a very unique departure from every other temporal prophecy in Daniel. This, in other words, again, I say this time and time again, if you're going to do that, friends, give me a textual reason. Don't just say you do it because you want to do it. You have to have contextual, textual, linguistic. You got to have reasons that the author gives you to make these movements. Otherwise, it's eisegesis, not exegesis. The third critique, okay, this is prophetic pattern analysis of his dealings. Biblical prophecy consistently follows telescoping patterns. Remember, I mentioned that he follows an erroneous telescoping method. So telescoping is common inside of biblical prophecy, where we have this broad historical sweep narrative, and then it sweeps kind of to specific crisis points. And then from those specific crisis points, you have divine intervention that occurs. That's the telescoping, large down to it narrows the scope, the temporal scope. And then what do you have? You have divine intervention. Well, Jason's interpretation, and I say Jason again, I'm saying this again, I say Jason, but by extension, I mean ADL. And because ADL is defending Adventist interpretation, by extension, I mean the Adventist Church. Jason and the Adventist Church reverses that pattern. Instead of following the normal telescoping pattern, large, overarching, broad historical sweeps, moves into the crisis point, and then you have divine interaction, divine intervention. What Jason does is reverses it. He says, no. This pattern is expanding, specifically dealing with measurements that encompass broad chronology. So it's going from tiny to now we're going the opposite way to 2,300 years. It expands over 2.5 millennia. So Jason's approach, it fails miserably in several areas. Grammatically, Hebrew syntax limits rather than expands. I've said that over and over and again. Literarily, apocalyptic convention focuses on temporal measurements with climactic elements. Contextually, it fails because the question specifically addresses cultic desecration. It does not address imperial 2,300-year succession. It does not address that. It fails historically. Contemporary Jewish interpretation consistently applies the timeline to Antiochus alone. And I absolutely love this statement. Yes, Adrian. It's like I have said this before. If Adventists are going to take 2,300 days, why don't they apply that day for a year to every other thing? Well, then here you go. I mean, it's a good point. And I've beat this drum before we even left the before we even left the church. I had issues with this. Okay. All right. A couple other points, and then we're gonna land the plane. Okay. I want to show, let me get this up on the screen. No, that's not what I want to show. If the 2300 figure covers only the desecration era, roughly 167 to 164 BC, there is internal coherence is preserved in the text. Just notice what's going on. You have the regular burnt offerings, continual offerings is taken away. Daniel 11, that deals with the historical correlation is the abolition of the sacrifices. Roughly, December 167. The sanctuary cast down, Daniel 11. Again, we have the altar to Zeus. The temple is defiled. Then you have the 2300 evenings, mornings until sanctuary is vindicated. That's Daniel 8:14. It's 3 years plus. Now I say 3 years plus. We dealt with both on this series and these episodes, as well as Revelation. We got into Buccaccini's kind of calendar stuff. You can kind of discern if it's exact and how you would deal with the calendar, but it's roughly 3 years plus the cleansing of the sanctuary until it was vindicated. That's Hanukkah 164. So this is very, very precise. And again, if you want Buccaccini's article on this, join the Discord chat. I'm happy to share it with you. We can read it. In fact, I think the previous episode, I even put the link on the last episode to Buccaccini's article itself. Read it. Look at how precise this can be when you understand the calendar properly. Now, the 2300 figure, when understood as individual sacrifices, evening, morning offerings, it's going to yield roughly 1,150 days. I'm not going to get into the precision of Buccaccini's article. That gets a little crazy, okay? And I'm not going to do that at the end of almost a 2-hour section here to go into that. But it precisely matches the historical duration of Antiochus temple desecration. It's mathematically precise, friends. I mean, you have to be really blind, and you really have to desire to not have this to be accurate, to force and twist the text to say things that's not there. Now, as a comparison, if you do what Jason did and you expand the timeline, if you do that, if you make the argument to expand the timeline to include Medo-Persia, 6th century, Greece, 4th century, 2nd century, it would multiply its length by centuries, which is a grossly inconsistent perception of 1,150 days, 2300 days. Again, that's the reason why they gotta, it makes a mess of the text itself. It just makes a mess. All right, friends. As we finish out, I want to show you one. Let's just kind of finish out with the whole vision argument as it relates to Jason's kind of perspectives here. Okay, so Jason's central claim fails comprehensive analysis. It just fails. Jason's argument here, the Hebrew word for vision must include everything. That was his argument. No, it doesn't. Very clear here. We went through the reasons for it. It limits the desecration period. Jason's argument, 2300 days, covers an imperial history. It covers all the time period. No, all Danielic time periods measure only final persecution. Jason's argument, the angel calls it visions of evenings and mornings. No, this supports the limitation itself. It's very clear. We went through this. Numbered duration defines the content. And then lastly, the Hebrew word, many days, yamim, yom, yamim rabim. He makes the argument, oh yeah, that deals with the extended multi-century duration. It deals with all the succession of all these imperial succession. No. The textual reality. And when we say, let's go to the text, let's go to the original language, we actually go to it here. We don't just go to the English. We go to the actual language itself, the original language. So textually speaking, apocalyptic idioms is equivalent to is future from Daniel's standpoint. So how many days? It's going to be days from, it's going to be some time, but it's not going to be 2,300 years. It's going to be, it was roughly 3.5 years or thereabouts. Okay. And that would have provided some good pastoral, I say pastoral, it would have provided a rhetoric of comfort for Daniel. Man, I feel like some of these things we've kind of gone over. I'm looking at my notes. I feel like I've dealt with some of these. Let's look at just a couple of last things, and then we'll provide a conclusion, and then hopefully we'll be done in the next 15 minutes or so. So let's look at the eschatology. I mentioned that I would go through this early on in the conversation. Okay, early on I mentioned this. If you go to Daniel 8:17, the Antiochus reading, oftentimes, and Jason does this, oftentimes will invoke verse 17 as part of the argument. So he came near where I stood, and when he came, I was frightened and fell prostrate. And he said to me, "And understand, O mortal, that the vision is for the time of the end." I have seen this horrendously used with like Stephen Bohr. I've seen it with people like Doug Batchelor. I've seen it with ADL. I mean, this is a common Adventist Daniel revelation. You know, anytime they're getting into this, it's the end of the world. That's the argument. Time of the end. Okay. That is not, okay. This just means an end point. The referent for this deals with the indignation or deals with the suffering that was previously discussed. The conclusion of the persecution, the suffering that's going on. This is not, how long will it last? How long? Well, it's going to last all the way to the end of the world. That's not what's happening here. That's a horrible understanding. And this is my encouragement to you. Don't let Jason, don't let ADL, don't let even the English Bibles, don't let the English words drive the interpretation of the text. Now, I'm saying this not because I don't think you have to become a scholar in order to understand. The Word of God is sufficient. It is sufficient for understanding what we need to be saved. Okay. The Word of God is sufficient, but that doesn't negate being good students. That doesn't let you off the hook. You are obligated to hold Scripture in high regard and treat it like an ancient text. So don't let the English words drive the interpretation. Go back to the original language. Use scholars that spend their lives in this stuff, dedicating themselves to working on the original text, the manuscripts, okay? So the vision's limit itself, the vision's limits, okay, its time frames are internal. They're already in the text. It's the time of indignation. Antiochus, the realm, it's not this universal eschaton. That's not where it's going. Reading the 2300 span as covering Media Persia, Greece, Antiochus, like the whole span, and even worse yet, going all the way to 1844 from 457, okay? But if you read it as like Medo-Persia, Greece, Antiochus, or whoever you term as the little horn, that is going to introduce an anachronism into the text. It introduces, it distorts Daniel's own end of wrath vocabulary. How long? How long will the persecution, when will you be vindicated? When will the sanctuary be vindicated? It'll be at the end. It'll be in 3.5 years, roughly. That's when it's going to be. Now, I've already mentioned this, the rhetoric function to it. Just going to mention this in passing, okay? Don't forget that Daniel, that this chapter specifically, but Daniel at large, Daniel 8 has a rhetorical function. And the rhetorical function is to reassure the persecuted Jews that their suffering has divine limits. It's not going to extend forever. And that function, that rhetorical function, requires very specific bounded temporal measurements. It does not allow you as a modern reader to make the claim that it extends now over thousands of years. All right, let's land the plane. The 2300 evenings and mornings. It represents neither the duration of multiple empires nor centuries of general history. Instead, the delimitation, the temporal restriction, deals with a specific period of sanctuary desecration under Antiochus IV Epiphanes. That's the temporal scope. Understanding this and making sure that that's in the text within its own context, letting the text drive the interpretation creates continuity. Where is the continuity? Well, it creates it in grammatical fidelity. We talked about that in the beginning. We are dealing with the grammatical construction. It deals with fidelity to the Hebrew text, limiting syntax. We're letting the grammar help us understand what's going on. Secondly, literary coherence with Danielic temporal patterns. We're remaining consistent. We're letting the text drive the interpretation with regards to literary coherence. Third, historical accuracy, especially when you get to Second Temple Jewish understanding, contemporary reception, the way it was dealt with originally. Okay? Fourth, theological consistency or rhetoric. The theological consistency with apocalyptic theodicy themes, divine sovereignty over suffering, those types of themes remains very consistent. The pastoral or the comfort rhetoric, the relevance to the hearers of what Daniel was communicating, dealing with the persecuted communities, the Jewish communities that were seeking divine comfort. How long will this end? How long until it ends? That's going to provide the rhetoric that Daniel was intending for his audience. We also looked at archaeological support from Qumran, Second Temple sources. Those are all consistent. Methodological soundness, making sure that our hermeneutical approach is consistent with what the text says. Now, as we land this plane, I think I've said that like 3 times by now. This is one of those long landings. Jason's argument, while it is superficially appealing, and when I say superficially appealing, when you go back and listen to this video or listen to Jason giving his spiel, I want you to notice how much ego stroking that goes on. Oh yeah, come on, preach it. Yeah. Oh, this is great. Amen. Yeah, you guys are awesome. Like that whole, like, it feels superficially appealing, and it feels great when it's especially in the construct of Adventists that like to hear what they believe. Circular thinking, groupthink. That whole construct. But unfortunately, it fundamentally misunderstands both the grammatical structure of Daniel 8:13 and the literary conventions of apocalyptic prophecy. Jason very clearly, his own style of telescoping introduces all kinds of methodological inconsistencies. They violate the text's internal logic. They contradict centuries of Jewish interpretation. They ignore established apocalyptic literary conventions. They completely disagree with the actual language itself. It frustrates the passage, frustrates us because, well, it's so out of context, but it frustrates the passage's rhetorical and their theological purposes, the intended function of the text. And it creates all kinds of inconsistencies within Daniel's own corpus. The 2,300 days, the 2,300 evenings and mornings, it measures very precisely what the text indicates, the bounded period of sanctuary desecration and Job's predetermined, or God's, not Job's, I don't know where that came from, Job's predetermined deliverance. The Antiochus interpretation doesn't undermine the text. In fact, it supports it. Jason's understanding completely undermines it. I would argue that if one does careful linguistic, literary, historical, theological analysis, and when I say careful, what I don't mean is go to ChatGPT and ask it if it says what you think it says. That's not research. That's horrible. That's horrible. So why does this matter? Why have I gone on for so long about this? Well, it matters because this demonstrates that Daniel's vision provides both historical precision and theological comfort to God's persecuted people. This is the application that we should be taking from Daniel. This is why Daniel is applicable to us. Not because we orchestrate it to mean what we want it to mean, but this is where the application should arise for us today, multi-millennia from Daniel's time period. We too can experience persecution, but God is sovereign. He's with us. This isn't going to last forever. How long? This isn't going to last forever. I hope, those of you that are still here, I hope that you see that this is what it means to have comprehensive evidence. Not just, I believe this. Comprehensive evidence. Grammatical, literary, historical, theological, archaeological, overwhelming support that supports the bounded temporal scope, the bounded scope that only the Antiochene reading can properly understand. And it decisively refutes Jason's expansive imperial interpretation. Just decisively. Now, Daniel 8 speaks, it does not speak of this multi-century chronological calculations. It doesn't. But instead, it speaks very specifically of God's measured judgment, predetermined deliverance during a very climactic persecution under Antiochus IV Epiphanes. Now, as we exit out officially, do you know what Epiphanes means? We say Antiochus IV Epiphanes. Do you know what Epiphanes means? It is his divine claim. Now, as you do research on this and as you do your own kind of, hey, where did it come from? Epiphanes means manifestation of God. It was a title that was assigned by himself to himself, implying that he was either a god or worthy of divine honor. That fits the theological construct of the arrogance, the spiritual arrogance. So friends, thank you for being here. It's officially been 2 hours. Thank you for hanging out. Please join. Please join by scanning the QR code. Please join the Discord channel. Reach out to me if you need. If you want any of the research that we've talked about, any of the documents to read, please reach out. I am so grateful to be here. Thank you for spending a couple of hours with me today. Can't wait for the next one. Subscribe, hit like, share, do all that stuff. Let people know about it. And we'll see you on the next one. Stay safe and stay in the Word of God, okay?